Hello everybody and welcome to your first lecture, Reflective Practice and Studio Journaling. I'm going to direct you to the second slide, which is a short film on reflective writing developed by the University of Melbourne, and then we're going to continue through how we can think about reflective practice and apply that to studio journaling and visual arts, which you are going to do via a blog.
In this video, you'll be introduced to reflective writing and some techniques to help you make the most of the reflection process. Throughout your degree, you'll be asked to reflect on theories you learn and experiences you have. Reflection allows you to look back on something and think deeply about it. By analysing, questioning, and evaluating the experience, you'll develop new insights and perspectives. Often this will in turn challenge your beliefs and affect your future actions. Reflective writing is a chance to think critically about how an experience made you feel and how this connects to your personal beliefs. We all have our own perspectives that we bring to any situation, which in turn affects how we see it. This process also gives you an opportunity to connect these experiences, feelings, and beliefs to theory and research. You can then use these ideas in combination to inform how you might act or think differently in the future. But be careful. One of the dangers when asked to write a reflective piece is to dedicate too much of your word count to simply describing the experience, rather than dedicating effort towards interpreting and evaluating it. The reflection then simply becomes a recount of what happened or a repeat of what you've studied. To avoid this, remember, your personal perspective is important. Unlike other types of writing, reflective writing is a chance for you to write about your feelings and experiences in the first person. To be sure your reflective writing piece goes deeper than simply describing the event, try considering your experience in relation to this model, DIEP. First, describe what happened. This could be a single incident or a highlight from that week's lecture or reading. You don't need to recall the entire experience, just a key aspect of the experience itself. Then, interpret the event. Consider what the experience might mean. How did it make you feel? How does it relate to other things you've learned? What new insights have you gained from it? Next, evaluate how beneficial or useful the experience has been. Finally, outline a plan for how the experience may impact on your thinking and behaviour in the future. Being able to write in this way takes time and practice. Start by brainstorming aspects of your experience first, then any relevant theories you've studied. Next, add related past experiences or personal beliefs. Once you've finished brainstorming, try making connections between the ideas. This final step will help you identify a theme. Doing this first will give you the best chance of producing a connected narrative where your experience, interpretations, evaluations, and plans are presented in a cohesive way. By focusing on a theme rather than the entire experience or entire reading or lecture, you'll be able to go into more depth in your reflection and dedicate more word count to your perspective and insights. If you have time and already have a topic to write about, pause the video here to start your own brainstorm and find a theme to focus on. Once you've identified your theme, you're ready to write. We're going to look at 2 sample paragraphs and review them against the DIEP reflective writing model. Pause the video here, read the 2 paragraphs and ask yourself, is one more effective than the other? If so, how? Why? Paragraph 2 is a much more in-depth reflection than the first. The sentences highlighted in bold in the second paragraph are additional points that were missing from the first. In the second paragraph, the author has identified their focus or theme, in this case their experience of writing their first technical document in the workplace. They've written about how the experience felt and connected this to theory. They've also identified an opportunity to develop further. The student who wrote the second paragraph will have a much deeper understanding of the experience and how they can use it to shape their own development in the future. Now, let's take a closer look at the language they used to demonstrate this deeper reflection. They've shown how the experience made them feel with language such as I found and I felt, and evaluated the experience with statements such as which gave me and it reminded me. Furthermore, their plans for the future are highlighted using language such as I need to, I'm very interested in developing, and I hope to. To be sure you have a balance of ideas and have not dedicated too much of your word count to simply describing the experience, try colour coding your description, interpretation, evaluation, and plan in 4 different colours. Here, the description is highlighted in blue, the interpretation in red, the evaluation in green, and the plan in yellow. This allows us to easily see the balance between these 4 elements. This is a great technique to try while editing your document. The example we've just analysed focuses on an experience, but the technique is equally effective when reflecting on lectures, readings, and theories. Many students who've been asked to write reflectively for an assignment have found it so beneficial that they've continued the practice even after the subject is finished. So, we've looked at how to approach reflective writing through an initial brainstorming phase. We've also applied the DIEP model to identify new insights. You're now ready to begin the process yourself. If you would like more detailed information on reflective writing style and how to avoid common mistakes, go to the Reflective Writing module in the Academic Skills Hub. You can access the Hub by logging into the LMS. For more tips and advice, to register for workshops or events, or to find out what's happening in academic skills, visit our website.
Reflective writing is examining the knowledge acquired through reading or through an experience such as art making, and making connections with other concepts that you have encountered in your learning. Reflexive writing is a deeper, self-critical practice that examines your underlying assumptions and attitudes and how they have been impacted by your learning. It is a little more personal than reflective writing. Both are descriptive, but also analytical, and they draw on your knowledge base and your experiences. Reflective or reflexive writing, in this case your blog journaling, encourages you to explore subjective thoughts and feelings while drawing on your personal experience. Reflection is a process that cannot be done in a rush. It needs time and thought. So my advice to you all is to take time at the end of each studio day to create a blog before you leave, or at least when you get home that night, do it that evening. If you leave it till days later, it won't be fresh and you will have already moved on in your thought processes. And it will also not help you in the long run for your assessment task too, and it will most likely be reflected in your marks. So to do a reflective practice well, you need to take time and not just describe what you've learned, but to also think about how and why you have learned it. So things you can try thinking about are 1, what people have said, such as the critical feedback that you will receive from me and from Des, but also casual feedback that you get from your peers in the studio. Sometimes this can be really important. Both have something to add to your studio learning, so take them on board. For example, in your blog, you might like to construct an entry like the one you can see below. In this instance, the student and I had discussed in a consultation about the use of colour within their work. In this instance, they were thinking about playing around with coloured pastel. And I made the comment that visually, when you're working predominantly with tonal work, as in the graphite and ink work that they were working with, that colour can act as a distraction. So the application of colour in an otherwise tonal and monochromatic work had to be carefully considered and thought about from both a subjective place, but also compositionally as well. And you can see here from the blog post that the student, Will O'Toole, decided that he felt that it perhaps detracted from the work overall. And the final outcome of his work at the end of that semester was that there was no added colour in the works that he finally submitted for assessment. Contextualising your practice and your project through research on artists and artworks is a really important part of the research in the studio that you do. So having a look to artists, Australian or international, who inform your thinking about your processes, techniques or methods, or perhaps from a conceptual point of view, are an important part of your blog process. And you can see from the example here that Charlotte May, a student from UOW this year, is looking to an artist that relates to her theme in her project about memory and place, particularly the houses that she grew up in. And all that is required in this task really is a few paragraphs, like the ones that Charlotte has done here, which describe a little bit about what the artist is engaging with and some of her ideas and how they relate back to Charlotte's progressing work. It's really important to make sure that you include an image of the artist's work and include a caption so that we know who the artist is, what the title of the work is, the year it was made, the materials and dimensions, or the duration if in fact yours is a time-based work. I want to draw your attention though to what she has included at the bottom as the sources. Now, while the student has correctly given me a website link, what she hasn't done is cite it correctly. At university, we need to get into the habit of citing our sources and resources correctly, and I've given you an example there of what that should actually look like. And note that ND indicates no date when a website doesn't advertise its publication date. And you can see in the little box in green that I have included a link to the University of Wollongong Harvard referencing that you can go to when you're not sure how to reference your resources or sources. Importantly, your blog and journaling should be what you yourself are thinking. For example, what did I learn through making this work or trying this new method or technique? And I've included again an example of Charlotte's work below. Her project, as I mentioned before, concerned making a scroll-like drawing of the houses that she grew up in and the things that she remembered from those places. She began the process by drawing on her earliest memories to her most recent. Take note of how she both describes and analyses her studio processes, including her experimentation with materials and technique, and her successes also, and her roadblocks. And further, she also plans what she will trial next, and I encourage you to read both of the inserted images that are on this particular slide. Recording, blogging, journaling about how your thinking has changed is a really important part of the overall process. And you can see here in this screen grab of Charlotte's blog that she, as her project is progressing, she's starting to think about her composition and a discovery about her process that surprises her. These are really invaluable and incredibly important part of your overall process, because at the end of this course, I'm going to ask you to write a summary reflection that encapsulates these things that you have been looking at and discovering throughout. So please take time to read Charlotte's blog on this slide. Importantly, your blog, your studio online journaling is all about getting you to think reflectively. Things that you need to consider are what you knew or thought you knew before you began the studio project or research on artists and artworks, what you learned during the making of your studio work, and things of note from your point of view. At the end of this course, your very final blog post is going to be what we would call a summative reflection, meaning that you are going to summarise the things that you have learned across the course from where you start to where you end. And so when you're completing that reflection, I want you to keep in mind the subject of the task that was in your mind. For instance, for this course, you are looking at iterative approaches to your current practice. Reflective and reflexive writing should link to those larger themes and topics, so that iterative approach, and should be relevant to the course as well. The next slide is Charlotte's final blog post. Read through to the end and then have a look at her final artwork outcome. Finally, some hints and tips for successful blog journaling. Firstly, break up your blog entries into days or workshops so that it is clear how you have progressed. So, for instance, your first blog post might be day 1, your next might be day 2, etc., or you might prefer to use the lecture topics instead. I tend to find that it's least confusing for students and myself if you take a day 1, day 2 approach. The second thing is it can be helpful to use subtitles, such as Charlotte did, like pros, cons, areas to improve, and overall reflection, to help you break down your thinking and analyse your process within each of those blogs. Each blog should be around about 150 to 200 words. You can write more, but aim to keep it succinct and to the point. I don't want to see you waffling on and around about it. Try and keep that thinking clear. You'll be able to get most of what you need in the 150 to 200 words, so aim to keep it around that mark. Also, make sure you take good, clear images of your work in progress, especially ones that include your studio experimentation, your processes, and plans. And note, if you are one of those who are planning on continuing to use a hard copy journal or diary, remember that you still need to take an image of 1 or 2 of your diary entries that are in your diary, and post these to the blog with accompanying text, summarising what you have done in your diary, and again, keep it to around the 150 to 200 word mark. The following are examples of past Introduction to Visual Arts hard copy journals. And if you are one of those students who are planning on using a hard copy as well, this is the type of exemplar that I would hope to see from you. And finally, I've given you some suggestions on ways you can start to think about the themes and topics that are currently relevant to your HSC body of work, or perhaps ways you might want to think about extending your HSC body of work ahead of our first workshop. So they may be including things such as the spaces, home or urban, suburban, the different types of materials that you are currently using or that you may wish to use. What types of themes are you looking at in your HSC body of work? What processes are you engaging with or wish to engage with? What type of form does your work take? What type of mediums are you playing with or want to play with? And what, if any, is the duration of the work you are exploring? These are all things that you can be thinking about ahead of our first meeting on campus, and which you may wish to blog about between now and then. I'm looking forward to seeing you in that first week. See you soon. Bye.